One of my favorite writers at the New York Times is a guy by the name of Steve Lohr. He's been covering hardware and software for, gosh, I don't know, probably over a decade. He's extremely knowledgeable, always provides great perspective and context. And I'll never forget back in 2006, opening up my Sunday paper. I always go to the Week in Review first, which is the editorial section on Sundays of the New York Times. And there was a story in the Week in Review by Steve Lohr. Now, Steve writes in the business section. He covers business. He covers technology. And here he was in the Week in Review. And I remember reading the story, and the headline was, "This boring headline is written for Google." And Steve wrote about the fact that the New York Times had hired search engine optimization experts to come into the paper and teach the journalists, the writers, how to write for search. And I remember he said in the story, he said, look, in the past I've always written my stories for the readers and for my editor. I've never written for a search engine. And now I've got to learn to write for a search engine as well. And in the story, the search engine optimization specialists that the New York Times had hired came in and gave them a case study about how the Tulsa Star, the Oklahoma paper, had SEO'd the way they do their thing. And in the story, he says he learned that, in the past, he wrote clever headlines, right? Headlines that, had some zing to them. But he said what he found out from the SEO consultants was that Google gives you nothing for wit, irony, humor, or style. Basically, you have to write a direct headline, not a clever headline, not a wordplay. That actually hurts you. The other thing he said was that there's a battle between search engine marketers and technologists. And every time the search engine marketers get too good, the technologists mix it up a little bit because they don't want people artificially inflating their rank. And he also says in the story that if you want to get a really great example of an organization that does a good job with search, check out the headlines that the Associated Press moves. Those headlines are out now all 40 characters or less. Since this article was written, the BBC has emerged as a fantastic organization with respect to SEO. They get the meatiest headlines down to the fewest characters possible so that they're relevant for search, but also interesting. And back to the story that Steve Lohr wrote, he said that here were some of the things that the Tulsa Star did to better SEO their newspaper online. In print and for people, they still had a section called real estate, but for search, they changed it to homes. For people, they still had a section called scene, and that was the lifestyle section. But for search, they called it lifestyle. In print, they still had a section called taste, but in search online, they changed it to food. And then he actually shared 3 headlines that the paper had changed from print to the web, right? Before they migrated the stories online, they search engine optimized them to unlock their archival value. So here's one headline: "Unsafe sex. Has Jacob Zuma's rape trial hit South Africa's war on AIDS? ? But of course, I don't go to Google for questions, I go to Google for answers. So when they migrated the story online, they changed the headline to read, "Zuma testimony sparks HIV fear." In print, they had a headline that was Tulsa Star, the life and career of a much-loved 1960s singer. But in print, they changed it to obituary: Gene Pitney. In the print version, they had a headline that said, "It's chemistry over pedigree as Gators roll to first title." But on search, online, they changed it to "Gators cap run with first title." So again, in search, you want to be direct, you want to be boring, you want to be straightforward so that when people are searching for information, they get a snippet and a clickable link that answers the question that they're searching for.